Imagine you happened to walk in on your own funeral. How would you like people to remember you? Would you like them to say things like, he was a good money manager? He always drove the best car. He had impeccable taste in music. Is that how you would like to be remembered? No. It's interesting how a question like that can cut through a lot of the nonsense that we think about our daily lives and really help us focus on what is important in life. One of the complaints I've heard on occasion is that religion tends to be overcomplicated. Do we overcomplicate our lives? Well, yes, I think we actually do. The spiritual life should be very simple. And at its core, I think this is the way I would summarise it. Love, and by that I mean love something greater than yourself. Seek the truth, however hard that might be, and do what is good. And really, that's all it needs to be about. So we can wrap up the service now and go home. This is all we need to learn. But one of the things that is said about the church is if it is really so simple, why did Emanuel Swedenborg write 30 volumes about it? In a sense, it is complicated, but it's complicated because we complicate it. We make it more difficult than we need to. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about that idea today. One way we do this is I want you to imagine yourself spending a day just doing this, nothing else, or in everything that you do, make sure this is at the core and centre and heart of every action. And observe yourself in the process and notice what happens. Notice how we have a tendency to make exceptions to these. We look around us at the people that we meet and we think, oh no, I shouldn't love them because. We look at the circumstances we find ourselves in and we say, oh, I don't have the time to do this now. I'll put it off until later. And we hide our exceptions behind this mask of being good. And religion's purpose is to challenge us when we do all of those things and refocus our lives on this. One thing you can say about Swedenborg is part of the reason he wrote as much as he did on something that should be so simple is because of the way we complicate it. And because of the way the church has often made it more complex than it needs to be. He was unpacking the layers, if you like, that the church had covered over what is very basic and simple, what ought to be straightforward. Now, I want to now go to Psalm 16, and I want to bring together this idea of the inheritance. O Lord, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup. You maintain my lot. The lines have fallen to me in pleasant places. Yes, I have a good inheritance. You will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. One of the things we do with this idea of the inheritance is we make it far too external. And the thing about that, the problem with making our inheritance an external thing, is that it often clashes with someone else's expectations or needs or desires in regard to their inheritance. You see, the Israelites looked at this idea of an inheritance and they focused very firmly upon the land of Israel. And we see it still today. And we see the clash and the problems that brings with that very, very external, physical, geographical definition of what the inheritance is. And indeed, they brought with it the idea that this land in which they lived would be at peace when it is ruled by the Messiah. It's ruled by the Lord as their earthly king. What the Christian church does at Easter is to recognise that this inheritance, that land inheritance, the geographical area, it's a fallacy. It's not a physical inheritance. The inheritance is the Lord. It's the Lord himself as he works through our salvation. And the kingdom that he reigns in is the kingdom of heaven. But it's interesting that the church has often regressed to a more physical way, a more external way of considering that idea. We do it in a couple of ways. One of the ways we do it is we focus upon the person of the Lord. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But we even see it in terms of some churches these days that are regressing further still to the land of Israel and establishing a temple at Jerusalem. These still exist within the Christian church. It seems unbelievable to me, but there it is. It is a regression from the promises of Easter and the true inheritance. We have to move beyond the physical inheritance, both of place and of person. The place of the nation of Israel and the person of Jesus Christ even. And we need to move to the principles that he stood for, the principles that he taught us in his earthly ministry. So our inheritance is not an earthly one, it is a spiritual one. In fact, it is when we love, when we seek what is true, and when we do what is good. That is our inheritance. And it's interesting that at every stage of this journey, from moving the inheritance as the land to the inheritance as the Lord, to the inheritance as the principles that the Lord taught us and represented in his ministry, we reinterpret and understand the word anew at every stage. Now, I just want to refer to this idea that you might have picked up as we read through the resurrection story. Two references to meeting the disciples in Galilee. You see, the thing about this idea is when Jesus says, I'll meet the disciples in Galilee, we don't quite understand what he's talking about. The distance between Galilee and Jerusalem is approximately 150 to 178 kilometres. It depends whereabouts you end up in Galilee, because Galilee is a region, not a city. Bear that in mind. The travel time by road is typically 2.5 to 3.5 hours. That's by car or bus. Now bear in mind the disciples were not travelling by car or bus, were they? How would they have travelled from Jerusalem to Galilee? They would have walked. If they were lucky, they might have a donkey to carry a few things, but they would have walked. It's the distance of Melbourne to Bendigo, if you want to put it in Australian terms, is almost exactly right on the money, the 150 kilometres. And it would take us 2.5 days of non-stop walking to get there. So why did the Lord say, I'll meet you in Galilee, when he knows the disciples are all in Jerusalem? Wouldn't it be easier just to meet up in Jerusalem? Well, there's obviously a point to it, isn't there? There's something deeper than just meeting somewhere that happens to be convenient. And think about what the two cities mean, the two areas mean. Think about the significance of Jerusalem. as the religious and political centre of the nation. The place where the Jews focus their attention, particularly at a time like Passover. And then think about Galilee and what Galilee is. Galilee is where the Lord spent most of his time in ministry. Galilee is a regional centre. We have cities like Capernaum, Cana, Tiberias. These are names we're familiar with from the Gospel. Galilee represents a place which is a mixture of Jews and Gentiles. It's a place of everyday concerns, far less worried about the religion and the politics that go on in Jerusalem. So when Jesus said, "Meet me in Galilee," what did he mean? The very last parable that Jesus told in the Gospel of Matthew, does anybody know what it is? The very last parable, can you think? It's the parable of the sheep and the goats. Now think about what the Lord told us in that parable. "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." That's Galilee. Jesus did not come to enslave us to his person. He said in John chapter 8, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." In chapter 10, he says, "The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly." And in chapter 6, something quite remarkable happens. Listen to this. "Therefore, when Jesus perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone." If we are enslaved to the person of Jesus, it's not really Jesus we're following. To really follow Jesus, what does it mean? It means, you would think, that we would listen to what he says, we would obey what he says and do as he asks us, as he recommends. But the church that insists on our enslavement to the person of Jesus also insists on this idea of salvation by faith alone. The mere intellectual acceptance of the person of Jesus, and dismisses any obedience to him as salvation by works. So I'll let you work out who it is those people are actually following. We are called to follow the Lord to Galilee. So our inheritance is not a plot of land. It is not found in identifying with any particular religion or ideology or group or community. It's actually not even found here, in these walls, in this service of worship. Our inheritance from the Lord is found in the concerns and struggles of daily life, in the interactions we have with friends and family and colleagues. Just wanted to share with you what we have on our front window, because for me this encapsulates our inheritance. Man is not born for the sake of himself, but for the sake of others. Our inheritance is found in love, in seeking the truth, and in doing what is good.